and welcome. My name is Sarah Dexter, and I am an admissions and recruitment specialist for the Brown School. And today we're going to talk a bit about part-time job opportunities. Thanks so much for joining us. To get started, I would like to have our panelists introduce themselves. So if you can say your name, where you're from, your program, and any jobs you've held during grad school.
So my name is Jess. I'm a first-year advanced standing MSW student concentrating in international social and economic development. I'm originally from northern Indiana, a very small town up there. And I've actually had two jobs while in grad school here at the Brown School. The first one is a graduate fellowship in the Office of Residential Life, working with undergrads. And the other one is a student ambassador in the Office of Admissions and Recruitment at the Brown School.
Cool. Hi everyone, so my name is Edwin. First year MSW student. I'm concentrating in health and specializing in management. I'm originally from New Jersey, but my parents are from South American Colombia. And originally, when I came here to grad school, I applied for two jobs, which is I currently work at the Eval Center, which is the Evaluation Center, and I'm currently also a student ambassador for Brown School Admissions.
Great, thanks so much. We're really glad that you both are here today. And as Jess and Edwin mentioned, they are also student ambassadors, so you may have chatted with them. They may have answered some of your questions. You may have gotten to know them a bit in a different capacity throughout this year. So before we get started and I dive into the questions with Jess and Edwin, we want to share a couple of important details with you regarding different resources and job opportunities. So we have a part-time job fair during new student orientation. That'll be in August. With that job fair, there will be representation from the Brown School and outside organizations, and that's open to any incoming students. There's job school federal work study jobs presented, administrative jobs, such as admissions, IT, career services, library services. There's also Brown School research centers there, as well as outside local organizations. In addition to the part-time job fair in the fall, you will also have access to Brown School Simplicity. This is an online database where you can search part-time jobs. These positions are posted throughout the year, so you don't have to worry about looking into that right now. They'll be available throughout the year, and jobs will continue to be posted. And you can access that by creating a WashU key, and you'll receive more information about that via email in June, sort of how to set up your WashU key, and then you can look into Simplicity. So thanks again for being here. To start off, could you tell us a bit about your current position and what this position has meant to you?
So, as I said, I am a graduate fellow in the Office of Residential Life. So I work with a lot of undergrads, mainly freshmen and sophomores. I work in 3 different buildings. My three big roles within that position are first to advise a group of undergrads who put on a bunch of programs and events within our 3 buildings. The second job is to support resident advisors in those 3 buildings and any issues they might face, and also help with programming efforts for that. And the other one is just to serve as sort of an ambassador to the general residential life community. So when I talk about my job too, when I tell people what I really do, I say that I usually place a lot of orders for catering. I buy large amounts of food for students who are in our 3 buildings. That's I would say my biggest job, but just general support to a bunch of undergrads.
Cool. So my current position is at the Evaluation Center. Right now we're in a project evaluating about 700 fathers for an agency. And pretty much what we're doing there as I came on board is to do online surveys as well as phone interview surveys. And we're just collecting that data, and then we're also trying to evaluate whether the Father Support Center program supporting the needs for the fathers at St. Louis County. So it's a great project to be part of as a student in the Brown School. In addition to that, I also work as a student ambassador, which is a great opportunity to meet new students who are coming onto the Brown School.
Great, awesome, thanks. And so could you share a bit how you found those positions? How did you find those?
So it was around this time actually, I would say like April into May, that I was getting set up with my graduate fellowship for residential life. For me, it was, I had like sort of like stalked the pages of WashU, all websites looking for graduate fellowships because I was one of those people who was just like, I'm gonna have something coming in, I need to figure out how to afford this. And so I was very proactive in searching for those positions. But then the announcement went out via the Brown School that those graduate fellowships, or there were graduate fellowships listed on admitted student resources, which you can also find still on our website. And so I found that there. I submitted my application, got confirmation back that they wanted to interview me, and did a phone interview. They don't require you to come in person, thankfully. I was across the country. So set that up, got that taken care of, and had my graduate fellowship solidified prior to coming here. Usually, I think it was sometime during the middle of May that I had that officially secured. My position as a student ambassador, that was something that was not brought up until, I believe, August. It was a position that I knew that I wanted, just because I enjoyed the student ambassador that I interacted with, getting to meet with them and go on a tour and lunch, those kinds of things. So I knew that I wanted to apply for the position, but those positions did not become available until August when I actually arrived here. In which case I just walked into the Office of Admissions and said, hey, I want to apply for this job. Yeah, I think that answers the question a little bit.
Yeah.
So coming on to school, I didn't have enough time to apply for a job. I came here in August for orientation week, and I was trying to sort out what center wide I want to work for, even outside of the school. And thankfully, I was going through Simplicity, and I was trying to find a good fit for myself, and I found the Evaluation Center. It kind of aligned with a lot of the goals and aspirations that I want for the future. So I just contacted the hiring person. I sent a bunch of emails, which is always good to follow up on them, because they also have a busy schedule and life as well. So I didn't get the job until October, so I waited about 2 months since August to October, just figuring out, man, I don't have a job. What am I going to do? Now all my classmates were already getting positions at the school and at all these centers, and I was freaking out. But thankfully, I was like, you know what? Let me go to their door and go up to the front door and ask her, hey, I'm really interested. Let me shadow you. Can I get an informational interview? And the supervisor was kind of like, wow, okay, I'm glad you're interested. So we had a 1-hour interview. It kind of aligned with their goal and as well as mine, and gave me the job right on the spot. So that's how I got the position. Even though I went through Simplicity and I was trying to apply through there, but it's much better when you to knock on the door and be like, hey, I'm interested, kind of like what you did with admissions. And during the spring semester of this year, I think around January or so, one of the admitted from the admitted office contacted me and said, hey, Edwin, I kind of already built a rapport with them, and they were like, we would love for you to work with us. And I was like, yeah, there seems like a great group of team members, and I would love to help out and meet new students. So that's how I got the position. So
Great. So it sounds like sort of a combination of things: applying through websites, but also putting yourself out there, putting a face to a name, and introducing yourself. Just going into the office and asking for more information. Yeah, that's great. Are there any other resources that you would suggest, maybe that your classmates have used, or any other suggestions on sort of how to find other opportunities that you can think of?
St. Louis is a city, so there are obviously places of employment, not outside of the Brown School and the greater WashU community. I really like working with the Brown School and residential life at WashU. But my roommate, for example, she's working at a coffee shop in St. Louis, which allows her to work in the morning, and then she has class in the afternoon, and that works for her. I have some other friends, other people I'm working with actually in residential life who are also doing babysitting and nannying, and sometimes they'll even be like, hey, I nanny for these 2 kids, but I can't come this day. Was wondering if one of you guys want to make a couple extra bucks today. So those are great opportunities that I know some of my people in my cohort engage in.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree. I 100% agree with that. I know a lot of classmates as well who kind of went outside of the school and found jobs that work with their schedule and were very flexible. Also, one of the things that really helped out a lot of our students and myself is going to these student fairs and job fairs that the school once in a while posted on the blackboard, WashU emails and stuff like that. And there you get to meet a lot of programs and jobs opportunities that they'll come on board and ask you, you just give them a resume. And it's a good day where you can present yourself and network with a lot of outside of the the WashU bubble, where there's hospitals coming on board, the Boys and Girls Club. So those are all the resources that you can, and also I think in the fall semester, there's a huge fair that's at the gym where like there's like hundreds of employers who come and are recruiting students. They know that you have a tough schedule, so they'll work with your schedule. I think one of the ones where I got my internship was, which is a paid internship, was actually with, they interviewed me and I was on the spot at the job fair. So it was pretty good, and I'm starting this summer, so it'd be awesome.
Yeah, that's great. So in addition, like asking friends, different websites, job boards, and also job fairs are a good way to get a lot of exposure to different opportunities. Very good. Do you have any other advice that you would give to students looking for jobs? Along with that, how many hours can you, would you suggest, or what sort of advice can you give? Like how many hours to work? Yeah.
No, that's a great question. So navigating that can be very hard because most of you probably have never been in grad school before. So you're coming to a new city, going to like do something that's a little bit harder than probably what undergrad was for you. And you have no idea how you're going to, or how many hours you should be working. I came in with the same thought, and that's why I secured my graduate fellowship. I was like, okay, 15 hours I'm devoting each week to that. And then what I usually encourage students to do is add on as you go. So maybe secure one job and say, okay, this is working. I'm working 5, 10, 15 hours a week. And then I'm also doing classes. How is that going for me? Reassess. If you think you can take on more, then I say go right ahead. But I think it's always just important to make sure that you are taking care of yourself first.
I would strongly echo that. I think when I first started in the fall, I was doing about 15 to 16 hours a week, but I had like 4 classes. And I guess I wasn't being real to myself. And then towards the end of the semester, I was like, man, I was burning out. So I had to like step back, and also like knowing, letting your supervisors know, or before you start the job, about your schedule so they can understand your flexibility. And I mean, yeah, I strongly echo that as well.
So a follow-up question, how do you maintain a balance? Like how do you manage a work-life balance, if there is one?
I think that's a funny question right now in finals week, because I don't know that I'm doing a very good job of that. I'd say that it's being very open with your supervisors, sort of how Edwin said, like when you get a job, it's important for your supervisor to know like, hey, I'm a graduate student and I have a lot going on, and maybe like these last 2 weeks of the semester, if I could like flex my hours a bit and work a little bit less. And my supervisors, the two that I have both been incredibly understanding of that. I don't remember what your initial question was, but work-life balance,
yes,
there we go. Yeah, it's hard, I won't lie. Work-life balance is something that I think, especially like social work and public health professionals, it's something that we're going to have to deal with the rest of our life. Separating work and your life at home can be rather challenging. I try to, if I'm doing something at home, I try to just ignore any messages I get about like the group of undergrads that I advise. I'm like, okay, we're not going to respond to this right now. We're going to let it sit. It's nothing pressing. I'm not going to look at this work email until I'm actually at work. Those kinds of things can be really helpful too.
I, again, echo that. I think, speaking for myself, one of the things that I struggle with, I always love to, I like to work a lot and keep going. But sometimes you realize, you have a life as well. And I think one of the things that has helped me was, again, just going to your supervisor and say, hey, like I have finals this week, I have midterms this week, and they're very understanding and they'll work with you. Like, so like, for example, I had finals this week and last week, and I remember I told my supervisor 3 weeks ago, I was like, hey, I cannot make it in the next 2 weeks, and they were totally fine with that. And they were able to replace me with someone else. And I think that's one of the things. And I think I spoke with Jess earlier before this interview was kind of like work-life balance. We're kind of like reflecting on that. And one of the things is being gentle to yourself. I think one of the things that I found very valuable for myself is trying to get as much as you can during the week. So when the weekend comes, you get to relax, chill, take care of yourself, have some ice cream at Teju's, a great place to eat. Trying to get self-care. So I think definitely take it slow. Like I wouldn't want to burn out. And I know as grad students, we come to Brown School wanting to do all these million sorts of things, get into all these projects. And I think if you do get into a center that offers research opportunities, I would highly encourage you to step back and say, okay, what is this project going to require a lot from me? And I think one of the things that when I was getting to a project was there was a lot of requirements. So that's additional work aside from your grad school work. So I would really look into positions that are not so highly focused on like grant projects that have like a timeline that have a deadline, and really reconsider if you want to get involved in that, because that'll be additional work. So yeah.
So it sounds like one, being gentle, being kind, being gracious to yourself, and also having healthy boundaries for yourself, but also communicating those boundaries and expectations to your supervisors, not answering emails when you're not at work, or communicating various deadlines with your own schoolwork. Yeah, that's great. So I want to transition to a couple of frequently asked questions. These are a couple things that these have come up in the past, and we wanted to note these. So for federal work study, students who are eligible for federal work study work in a variety of areas within the Brown School. Students may be hired for clerical positions, IT, facilities, or library services, to name a few. Some also work as research assistants to faculty members or research centers. To participate in these work study opportunities, you'll want to confirm on your award letter that you are eligible for this program. Additionally, a note for international students, those who have an F1 visa can work up to 20 hours a week. So that's just something to be mindful of when you're looking for different opportunities. So now we want to move on to some questions from you all. Okay, so for our first question, how do students manage multiple research positions? Is that possible? Would either of you like to speak to this, or I can speak to it as well?
How do students manage multiple research positions? Interesting. I think it goes back. One of my classmates are in 2 research positions, and they love the work, and they were getting involved in a lot of the research project. But it also came down to being able to give you 100 in grad school, and I think some students are driven by that, momentum, and they can do it, and then some students can't. And I know a classmate who was able to kind of like step back and say, well, I have to let go of this research position and like stick with this one that is less timing. So
So it sounds like some folks are able to do 2 positions, and some may not. Just kind of depends on your own capabilities and your own values and what you're working for. We also have some questions that have been submitted in advance, so we will touch on those now. Let's see. So how many hours a week do you feel that you can balance working on top of school and practicum? You've mentioned this a bit, but like how many hours? What's a good range, do you think? With school and practicum.
Yeah, so I am currently not in practicum. As an international SED student, I've structured my schedule a little bit differently so that I'm able to do an international practicum for my concentration practicum. So my best guess, or what I usually tell prospective students when they ask me similar questions to this, is I say, go for like 20 to 25 hours of practicum plus part-time employment. Don't try and do anything more than that. But I also don't want someone to now who's watching this say like, oh no, like I don't think I can do 25, and she just told me that I should do 25. Like, I think it varies from person to person. You know yourself better than anyone else. You know how well you'll be organized, how well you'll be able to meet deadlines for classes. So I say, again, as Edwin said earlier, be gentle. Take things slowly, add on as you feel that you can. But my best guess is somewhere between 20 and 25.
I personally am in internship and I'm not doing 25 hours. I think for me, what has worked is grad school is usually Monday through Wednesday. I think the classes kind of sort out. Sometimes if you do a skill lab, it lands on a weekend. But for myself, I made sure that when I spoke with my supervisor at my internship, I said, I was willing to do at least 16 hours a week, which is Thursday and Fridays from like 8 to 5 p.m. And during that time, sometimes it can vary. If you're doing a lot of hands-on work at your internship, you may not have opportunities to like go over your schoolwork. But I think for me, it has worked out where I'm doing the similar work at the internship and doing evaluation stuff as well as my work with evaluation center. So it kind of helped doing the 2 at the same time, which has been very helpful. For me, like I'm working 10 hours a week here at the school, and I'm doing my internship, my practicum 16 hours a week, so that's like 26 hours. But you can always, every week is gonna vary. So one week you'll do 10 hours in your internship or 16 hours, and one week you'll work 5 hours, or it depends, you know. So the good thing is making sure that your supervisors at your practicum and at your job at the school or outside the school is willing to work with you. And I think I think 99% of the time they always understand that, hey, you know, he's a grad student, and they work with that. So did I answer your question?
Yes, you did. That's perfect. So it sounds like it's certainly a range. For some folks, it may be 20, 25 hours. For other folks, it may be 10, 15. It may also depend on the week. So there's definitely variation, and also the key piece is to be in communication with your supervisor when your schedule needs to fluctuate. Do you want to add something?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that. So when you first come into the fall semester, if you're not advanced standing, you can wait to do your practicum in the spring and the summer. So that gives you time to really think about your scheduling, your time, how many classes you're taking in the spring. So for example, when I'm advanced standing, so when I started, I did not do any practicum in the fall because I was taking 5 courses, and I was like, that would be way too much to handle. So I waited till the spring, which I was able to take 4 courses plus practicum. So you can always range depending how many credits you're taking. So if you're taking 1 credit for the spring for practicum, it's only about 120 hours that you can do, and that can easily be done 5 hours a week or 10 hours a week. And also, if you do 2 credits a semester, that's about 240 hours a semester, and that can range from like January to April or May. And some practicums are willing to extend even to, like, let's say you finish in April or May, they're willing to extend to like June. And you can even bleed it into the summer as well, which has been very useful for me. So I know for me, I'm not going to finish, even though I finish my semester in this week or next week, I'm going to finish my practicum during the summer, during June. So it kind of like gives you leeway. So just, flexibility is key to practicum, I think.
And that leads perfectly into our next question. So do you have any suggestions for time management?
I suck at time management, honestly. I think I'm a messy guy. Like, if you look at my desk, it's full of papers, and I'm just trying to thank God for Outlook. So I downloaded the Outlook email from Muso on my phone, and I was able to put, like, if I have a meeting with Sarah or whoever, I just put it down immediately on my phone. I have to keep track and then, like, let you know, hey, you have a meeting, you have a homework, you have an assignment. So I think that's very helpful. Does that tie with work?
Yeah,
right?
no, that's perfect. I think time management in general, which includes work, classes, being a person, I think all of that ties together.
I would also add on to that, just like one thing I was thinking about as everyone was talking. When you get an email of something you have to do that's like just a 5-minute task, do it then. It's better to just take care of it on the spot than have those things pile up and then you feel like your to-do list is just overloaded, even if it's just a couple 5-minute tasks. It's great to just knock those out right away, one less thing to think about.
Great. So another question, how do students pay for their living expenses when on campus jobs may not be as competitive or may not pay as much as jobs that folks are used to coming from working full-time?
Can I ask, so when you say expenses, do you mean like food?
So yeah, so like I would say
utility
rent,
bills or
utility, that sort of thing, yeah. Maybe thinking about yourself or your peers.
Yeah, so whenever someone asks me, how do you afford this? The price tag is a lot higher than it seems, is what I always tell people. So like on our website, you'll see there's a bunch of resources in terms of scholarships that our Director of Financial Aid has put together that you can take a look at. So like I'm doing like basically everything that they list as like options for how to pay for this. But in terms of like cost of living or living expenses, I'm covering all of that through my 2 part-time positions where I think I don't know if I actually said this explicitly earlier, is that I'm working between 20 and 25 hours every week. And in doing so, I'm able to cover my entire cost of living. My tuition is covered with scholarships and financial aid. So everything else that I make goes toward making sure that I'm living and breathing and existing in the world, you know.
If you were to ask me the question, living in Miami, I would say there's no way you can handle that. Just because rent is like over $1,500. But here, luckily, St. Louis, some classmates pay like $250 with roommates. If you're by yourself, you can find great apartments, great locations for like $650, $590 to $650, which is amazing. So I think it is manageable. I know I took out a small loan for like any expenses in the fall semester, just to make sure that I have enough. But the cool thing with being a grad student is that we create groups on Facebook, and one of the groups that I'm in is called Free Food on Facebook. And I think there's about 80 people in that group, and every time a student finds food in a location at the Brown School, they'll let everybody know, gives a heads up, hey, there's free food here, there's free coffee. So I haven't spent, it's really hard to spend a dime on coffee or food just because everybody's so connected that they'll let you know, and your peers will let you know there's some so I think with that, there's definitely ways of managing, like expenses like that. So for utilities, I know through my part-time, like electricity, internet, Brown School offers unlimited Wi-Fi. Coffee shops around here offer limited Wi-Fi as well. I've always spent time in school or at the coffee shops using internet. But again, the utilities are very cheap here in St. Louis compared to in Miami when I was paying way high. So
yeah,
it is manageable, guarantee you that. If not, look for us in fall, and then I can link you to the free food group on Facebook.
That's great. You're collaborating with each other and helping each other out. That's awesome. Another question that just came in, are work positions guaranteed for 2 years or just 1 year at a time?
I think that varies from job to job. That's something you would want to communicate with your supervisor when you first establish the position. I think that, so for me as an advanced standing student, I'm only going to be around for a year. In the fall, I'm going to be abroad doing my practicum. So I only was looking for 1 year positions, but I know there are various positions that will allow you to stick on a second year. I mean, you already have 1 year of experience. You're more than qualified for the job to do a second year.
I think it also depends if you're into research projects. I know some centers have a limit. They'll put it on simplicity. This position is temporary. This position is 5 to 6 months. I would make sure to look out for those things, because if there is a 5 to 6 months and you're really interested, I suggest go for it and then talk to your supervisor. Hey, I'm really interested. Can I extend my position here? And usually most of the time they'll extend it. But for myself, working at the evaluation center, there's not an extension. I mean, there's not a limited period of 5 to 6 months. It's just the projects is for 5 years. So thankfully, I'm here until I graduate. And if I graduate and they like me a lot, then they'll hire me. But I have, it's definitely manageable. You can last more than 2 years.
Yeah, so it sounds like it depends on the position, and communicating with your supervisor ahead of time would be helpful. So the next question, do people take night classes so that they have a better balance between work opportunities and practicum? Do either of you know about this?
Yeah, so I myself, I'm a night person. I'm horrible at morning. So for me, I've noticed that I'm more attentive during the night, and it works out fine. So for example, last semester I was able to do some night classes in the evenings, and I had all morning to study. I had all afternoon to have a part-time job, so that does help a lot. For me, it helped as well. So short answer, but yeah, to answer that, it is possible.
No, that's great. So if you could just touch on this very briefly, can you suggest any neighborhoods for students to look in that have reasonable cost of living or rent?
Yeah.
I would say, I think what I tell people is the further away you are from WashU, probably the cost of living will go down. Though I'm living only a mile away from campus, and I would say that it's relatively cheap, comparable to any place I've lived in Indiana, which most places I've lived in Indiana were very rural, and cost of living was relatively low there. So yeah, I would say that the neighborhood I live in is University City, which is again very close to campus, near the Loop, and it's, I would say, reasonably priced.
Yeah, I would second that. I think coming from Miami, where rent was above $1,500, coming here, my rent when I first came, I lived kind of blocks away from the university, kind of DeMond Ave. You can Google that, it's a great location. And don't be scared by the prices. I think for me, if you drive around, if you come here earlier and you drive around, you find some great spots, they will have opportunities where you can call the number and they'll give you a price, and it usually ranges from $580 to $710. So for a 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, I'm paying $700, and it's in a great location. It's walking distance. I know like there's some areas if you have a car and you want to drive to school, there's some great areas like Tower Grove, South City, where it's very diverse. They have a lot of restaurants, great for students who are into like international foods and all of that. Also, I can think of Central West End, which is more of an upscale area, but a lot of students do roommating there. And the prices are much higher, but even the Loop, which is like 5 minutes away from here, we have like great location for students. It's like a student hub, and a lot of classmates are like do roommating, which is like $300 per person if you roommate with someone. So
Great.
it's definitely cheap in St. Louis compared to other states. I guarantee you that.
Yeah, and if anyone watching has specific questions about neighborhoods or housing, we have an admitted students page where folks are chatting about the different neighborhoods that they're looking in, and then you can of course reach out to us at our Brown Admissions email, and we'd be happy to share some more information about that as well. So those were all of our questions. Thank you so much. We want to share a couple of upcoming dates. So our next virtual info session is June 6th, and that's Ask Us Anything. So submit your questions, anything that you're curious about or you want to learn more about, please submit your questions, and we will answer those for you. So I want to thank Edwin and Jess again for coming here today. And if you have any questions about the session, feel free to reach out to me. My name is Sarah Dexter, and my email is up there. Have a wonderful afternoon.